This is the story behind the murder of Carla Jan Walker. In this video, we will be talking about everything you need to know about her death. But before we start, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to this channel. On February 17, 1974, Walker and her boyfriend, Rodney McCoy, sat in his car in the Brunswick Ridgely Bowl parking lot after leaving a dance at Western Hills High School. The automobile door was forced open by an unknown assailant, who then attacked the two occupants, knocking the magazine out of the gun in the process. McCoy was killed in a barrage of gunfire. His last memory of what happened was a white man, around 5'10" inches tall, grabbing Walker and dragging her away while she yelled for help. Walker vanished after McCoy regained consciousness. McCoy went to Walker's house to inform her parents about the event. Around 1 a.m., Rodney woke up in the driver's seat. It was less than a mile to the Walker's house, so he made haste there. He went to the grassy area in front of the house and slammed on the brakes. Leighton and Doris Carla, their children and grandchildren, were all awake and playing dominoes in the dining room. Jim, Carla's younger brother, was 12, and Cindy, her older sister, was 18, and they were both watching TV in the living room. When they opened the door to check who was beating on it, they were shocked to discover Rodney with blood pouring down his face. Leighton, a former lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, snatched his gun and sped out to the bowling alley. Doris called the operator on the rotary phone the family had and asked to be put in touch with the police. The police arrived shortly after. Carla's purse and the magazine clip from the attacker's gun were located during a search of the parking lot. A number of other police cruised the neighborhood in patrol cars looking for Carla. More people joined the hunt when daylight arrived. A select few flew around the city in helicopters equipped with binoculars. On the first day of the new school week, Monday, detectives showed up at Western Hills High. Photos from the dance were developed and analyzed to identify anyone who didn't quite fit in. In the halls, they approached the kids and asked if they knew anyone who would try to harm Carla. Fort Worth's population has doubled since the 1970s, when it stood at around 400,000. The city's promoters portrayed it as a pleasant place to raise a family free from danger. Carla's sister Cindy informed me, "In our neighborhood, people didn't even lock their doors. It may seem bizarre, but we were so innocent about crime at the time that we couldn't fathom Carla was dead. We anticipated that Carla would be dropped off by a passing vehicle, and that would be the end of the story." 4 days after Carla went missing, on February 20th, 2 police officers were searching for her along a lonely 2-lane road near Benbrook Lake, which is located approximately 5 miles to the southwest of the bowling alley. They had seen a culvert, a tunnel made of concrete that allowed water to flow beneath the road, and had stopped to take a look inside. A young woman was found lying on her back, her face and neck covered in significant scratches and bruises. Carla, that's who. At the culvert's entrance, her blue dress was bloody and torn in several places. Her bra was pulled up above her breasts, and her underwear and pantyhose were wadded up together. Someone had strangled her. Investigators concluded that the perpetrator had used his hands to suffocate her because no ligature marks could be found around her neck. Carla's parents were notified that they needed to come to identify their daughter at the hospital morgue. Jim accompanied them. Walker's dress and other clothing were preserved. Regrettably, back in the 1970s, the technology was not there to use such samples to identify the offender. One of the few pieces of evidence that made it into the public domain was a cryptic letter sent by someone claiming to know the killer. More than 1,250 people showed up to her burial at the Western Hills Church of Christ, packing the cramped sanctuary to capacity. Friends of Carla's who passed by her open casket were moved with emotion. They, too, were terribly afraid. After school, they no longer cruised along Camp Bowie Boulevard, and some of them never came out of their homes again. Kathy O'Neill, who was the yearbook editor at her high school, once babysat in the area and had to call her parents as soon as she arrived to let them know she was okay. The Western Hills High PTA also offered self-defense training, which was taught by 2 men who both had black belts in jiu-jitsu. Investigators from various Fort Worth police departments came together to form a task force. However, there wasn't much for the team to look into. Carla's corpse and belongings had been searched, but no fingerprints were found. The cuts on Rodney's head were the source of the blood that stained her clothes. Blood, OD, and other human fluids were discovered, but at the time, there was no way to determine who they belonged to. There were no parking lot cameras or license plate readers along roads in that era. Officers at the downtown police station sat behind metal desks, drinking lukewarm coffee and listening to the names of guys citizens felt were responsible for Carla's murder being passed on. Callers to the police station speculated that a pair of marijuana sellers, a carnival worker at the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo, and a shy young man who bowled alone at the alley where Carla had been taken were responsible for her death. The night before the dance, they heard rumors of a fight between a boy and Rodney at Mr. Quick Hamburgers. A man who wouldn't identify himself called them too. He said he was acquainted with the killer and that the killer hadn't intended to kill Carla, but only wanted to fuff her. After Rodney suffered a head injury, the police decided to bring in a hypnotist to see if he could provide any additional information. However, the most important detail he recalled was that Carla's kidnapper sported a tan or brown cowboy hat. A scared kid, all torn up inside, tormented that he didn't do enough to save his girlfriend, Minter said of Rodney after the hypnotist snapped his fingers and the boy awoke. At least one meeting of the task force detectives focused on a different cold case that occurred almost precisely a year before Carla's death on February 7, 1973. A young woman named Becky Martin didn't come home that night after attending a class at the South Campus of Tarrant County Junior College. Almost 7 weeks later, her body was discovered. The body had decayed to the point where determining what killed it was impossible. The coroner speculated that Martin may have been stabbed, strangled, or shot in the stomach. Investigation. Here, researchers used the DNA to create a family tree and search for matches in a public database of people who agreed to have their data used to help identify crime victims and perpetrators. Still unsolved in the spring of 2020, Middleman saw Walker's case highlighted in an episode of The DNA of Murder. The crime scene was located in Fort Worth, Texas, which is roughly 3 hours away from Othram's main office in Houston. Following up on leads provided by Othram, Detectives Wagner and Bennett were able to identify 77-year-old Glenn Samuel McCurley as a suspect in the murder. McCurley had been interviewed by police soon after the slaying because he had purchased a .22 Ruger pistol using the same magazine as the one dropped in the parking lot of Brunswick Ridgely Bowl, but he claimed the gun had been stolen from his truck. He submitted to a polygraph examination and was subsequently cleared of any wrongdoing. In 2020, DNA samples were taken from his garbage can by the police. McCurley was interviewed by police and given a cheek swab after it was determined that the sample was a match for the suspect's DNA. He was arrested and charged with the crime because his DNA matched the evidence. In August of 2021, McCurley's trial began. The .22 Ruger pistol McCurley claimed was stolen in 1974 was discovered hidden in his home and used as evidence in court. On the third day of the trial, McCurley pleaded guilty and was given a life sentence. On March 21, 2029, McCurley, who is now serving time at the Gib Lewis unit, will become parole eligible. According to a 2022 interview with writer Skip Hollandsworth, he denied killing Walker but pleaded guilty because "I'd had enough hounding." Although McCurley has not been charged with any further crimes, investigators suspect he was involved in the rapes and killings of numerous other young women in the Fort Worth region in the 1970s and 1980s. This is the end of this video. Make sure to subscribe to this channel and give this video a thumbs up.